Hey, everybody. Good morning and welcome to the OPT Network. This morning, we're talking to every parent. And sometimes we may or may not question our parenting skills. But this morning, we have an expert on point to just give us some pointers on how to parent more effectively, how to make our lives better and the lives of our kids. Dr. Deborah Tillman is a child development and parent educator, speaker, author, and founder, CEO of Happy Home Child Learning Centers. Dr. Tillman is best known as America's Supernanny. Now, you've probably seen her on Lifetime. Well, she's got a new book called Parenting on Purpose, Menu for Raising Children in Today's Society. And you've probably also seen her as a recurrent guest on the Steve Harvey Show, CNN, The View, and the list goes on and on and on. And we're proud to invite and have Dr. Tillman on point this morning. Dr. Tillman, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Carlette.
Man, Dr.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We're super excited about the opportunity. The book is amazing, and I think it makes every parent really just think about it. But before we talk about the content of the book, I want you to take us back to that seminal moment in your career about 20 plus years ago when you and your husband come together after horrific experiences with daycare, and you say, enough is enough. I'm going to put myself aside, my career, what I want, and I'm going to start my own school. Talk about that moment.
Oh, that moment. It's a moment I'll never forget, but it was well after 7 child care provider experiences and daycares and schools we had put my son in, and I tell you, I had the worst experiences ever. I found myself so frustrated, and I was going to work every day crying because I did not know, if somebody was going to hurt him again. And so after, the first one, of course, from the book that when I walked in, 2 hours after dropping him off, he's still in the same car seat with his coat on, sweating profusely. And I just couldn't take it. I took him out of that daycare, and then we went to, the second and third. And then we got to the 7th, and by the 7th, you can imagine I'm undone. I'm just like, God, why is this happening to me? And that's usually the question we ask.
Right.
Why? And I was not hearing a word. And so at the 7th, when I walked into the room, the lady had him in the back room. I walk in, he's in the bassinet. The wall is holding up a bottle that he has in his mouth, and he's sucking air.
Wow.
And my heart just dropped, and I just looked up to God. I literally just looked up to God and said, what do you want me to do? And that is the only time that I heard those 7, small words, that still small voice that said, I want you to do it better. And I quit my job the next day. I knew what my purpose was here on earth.
Wow. So when you hear that still small voice that says, I want you to do it better, what comes over you at that moment? Because this is completely beyond your bandwidth, really. You're an accountant.
Right.
You're not, you're not thinking, okay, do what better? What comes across your mind?
Well, what I knew for sure was that he wanted me to take care of children better. He wanted me to take care of families better. He wanted all of the things that I had not gotten in those 7 child care experiences. He wanted me to do that better. So that was very clear to me. How I was going to do it, the how, I had no idea. But I just heard that voice that said, I want you to do it better. And I was very clear on what my assignment was at that point.
Wow.
So I knew I had to quit my job and then go back to school to get a child care provider course, because back in those days, it only took 25 hours to get a child care provider course. Eventually, I wound up getting the master's degree and the doctorate. But that was not my mission at first. My mission was just to quit, take care of my baby, and take care of other parents' children so that they would not have to go through the same pain and heartache that I had to go through.
Now, talk about what kind of faith that it takes for you to literally step out of the boat.
Wow. And that was the name of my first book, Stepping Out on Faith, How to Open a Quality Child Care Center. I literally, it takes, I tell people it takes you have to get to a point where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to get to a point, almost for me, or be desperate. And for me, it was both. I was sick and tired and desperate. And so my faith had been strong because I grew up, and not just about church, but just grew up understanding that there was greatness in me and that there was something else that God wanted me to do. And even though I had a very lucrative accounting job, I felt in my spirit that that was not my purpose. I was not here on earth just to do that. And, that is I'm not casting dispersions on any other accountants, but my vision, the vision God had for me was to take care of families and to help them come together, get it together, but most important, stay together.
And so what does your husband say when you say...
Oh, my goodness. Well, this was wonderful that he went through the actual seven child care experiences with me, because he was actually a little bit tired of seeing me cry. He was tired of seeing me so depressed. And I think at that point, it was his breaking point as well. And men, deal with emotions a little bit differently. But he looked at me and said, okay, if that's what God told you. And I was I was so convicted. I actually told him the whole experience, and he felt it when I said it. And so he was like, if that's what God told you as a man of the house, then I'm going to go with what God told you. And so, hey, I'm going to make it happen. He was working at Georgetown University. He's been there for 25 years, but he was like, whatever it takes, we're going to do this together. Wow. And that was a great validation for me to, have him, trust me and trust that this was my mission on earth.
What I think is so amazing is that not only are you taking care of children, but you're helping families. Talk about when you understood on a very much a deeper level that families were in trouble.
Yeah. I think, obviously every experience that you have in life is just preparation. So even though I was looking at the 7 child care experiences as, why me, pain, suffering, I realize now that it was obviously for a bigger purpose. And so for every parent for the last 25 years that I've been doing this, every single situation that I went through, I have met a parent that had gone through that. And I was able to really say, not just I understand, but I really understood because I went through it. And so, I tell people all the time that, for 25 years, I was already doing this work. Because I put my heart and soul and spirit into it. In the house, I started in an apartment, Carlette, and I didn't have any employees, but I made a policy manual, 20 pages. I didn't have any parents. For real, I didn't have any parents, maybe
That's
my
wonderful.
son and his best friend. And I constructed a parent handbook. So I was already operating with under the auspices that I was going to have some schools. And so it just kind of came like that. And what I say all the time is that I was doing the work anyway. I would have parents call me, 10 o'clock at night. Miss Deborah, I can't get him in the bathtub. Tell me what to do. And literally, because I lived in the same building where the school was, my husband thought I was crazy, but I would go to their house or I would talk them through it. So I was already doing the work, but it wasn't until I got the America's Supernanny show where I actually felt it like, okay, this really isn't about the children. It's really about us, the parents, getting ourselves together, being the best that we can be so that our children can be helped and have every opportunity to reach their divine destiny.
I love it. Who knew that 25 years ago that God was preparing you for such a time as this? The book is called Parenting on Purpose. We're going to take a break here, but when we come back, we're going to give you some amazing tips that make us all consider some of the things that we're doing as parents. Stay on point. We're back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. We're so honored this morning, and we want to thank our listeners and viewers because you guys sent us a memo, and you said that you would love to have America's Supernanny on point, and our team went to work, and now she's on point talking about parenting on purpose, menu for raising children in today's society. So, Dr. Tillman, I know that this book was like 7 years in the making. Talk about birthing this book.
Yeah, I started out probably, just little thoughts God kept giving to me. And all I would do is just write them down in a journal. I'd write everything, all of my experiences I wrote in a journal, so that was the first book. But then this parenting book just came from my daily affirmations. Every day I wake up and I do a daily 5. You know, I wake up, I pray, I write down what I have to do for the day, but honestly, I don't go over 3 things, Carlette. I don't write a list of 20 things to do.
Good.
I do 3 things, that way I'm successful. And then I do a little visualization, and then I do my daily 5 where I really talk about, okay, what is it that I want to give to the world today? Like literally, what is it I want to give to my child, my husband? And then, you know, a time for gratitude where I write that down in my journal. So I had been doing that for years. And so when the book came about, when God birthed that in me or put that seed in me, I said, okay, let me go to my journal. And I actually just started looking in my journal when Zeppelin was young, and that's my son, Zeppelin, and I said, okay, what if I was a new parent, what is it that they would just definitely need to know, some nuggets that they would need to have in their pocket so that they can help their child reach their divine destiny? What is it that I need to give these parents? And some of it is very, you know, I'm very honest. I'm very straightforward. Anybody that knows me knows I don't, you know, my yes is my yes, my no is my no. And so the book I wanted to keep very simple. It's 100 pages long. And I just put the menu together because I love to eat. And I said, let me start out with a menu. The menu has an appetizer.
Right.
The appetizer really is the starter. And so who is that? That's us. Every parent that you know in America, I don't care, black, white, whatever, we all need to look inside. It's almost like an inward, outward. And we need to find out who we are before we can raise our children. That's the first thing. First thing.
And so talk about finding out who we are, being honest enough to know who we are so that we don't pass down those cyclical or generational things that happen from generation to generation.
Right. Well, it takes a lot of soul searching. I mean, that's the hardest part of the book. I actually put together some modules that'll come out in April, a 7-module series on parenting, but it starts out with some really intensive inward work. Like, where did you get your parenting style? Do you even know what your parenting style is? What things, if you could have done them differently, would you? So we start out with a whole bunch of just kind of unveiling, like taking off the mask, the onion, all that stuff that we're wrapped in. And, you know, because a lot of that keeps us tied up and not being able to be our best. So if we can't be our best, then how on earth are we expecting our children to be their best? And so oftentimes you find things like, you know, I'll just take something simple. You're in a store and a child's having temper tantrums, and the parent knows what to do intrinsically, like they feel it in their heart. Like, I already told you that you're not getting this candy, so, you know, we already talked about that. So either this choice or we leave the store. Instead of saying that, they look around and they're sort of, you know, the kid's falling out, they're embarrassed, they see people looking at them, and so they make the wrong choice. Then they, you know, decide to let me just shut the kid up and give the kid the candy. So then what are you doing? You're teaching the child that, okay, so this is what I do to get what I want.
Right.
So a lot of that gets unveiled when we go through this self-assessment of, like, not worrying about what the world thinks about us, that God created us in his image, and he created us to have, if we are gifted with children, we have a responsibility, not just to birth them, but to raise them. And in order to raise them, we got to do some things. And it's hard work. You know, Jim Rohn said you can't pay somebody else to do your push-ups for you and expect to get the results. We have to do it.
Absolutely. You know what really struck me the most about the book is no parent, no mother especially. I don't know if dads feel this way or not, but no mother wants to feel like she's not doing it right.
Right.
And so it causes us to look inward at ourselves and be honest. And present company included, it was really a wake-up call for me as a reader and a parent to say, maybe there are some areas, there are some areas that I can improve in. So talk about how you help, because I wondered, like, watching the Supernanny, America's Supernanny, and going into people's home, the most prominent sort of motif, if you will, is every parent starts making excuses, and they all say almost the same thing. I'm not a bad parent. So before we can do the work, we got to get past, I'm not a bad parent.
Exactly. And sometimes, you know, it's very difficult, Carlette, because you don't even, I mean, oftentimes I operated in the vein that I have to get them to trust me. First of all, these people are being very brave and courageous by opening up their homes and allowing me to come in, okay, to even help them. Even though
and not just you, Dr. Tillman, but the world.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, exactly. Amen. But I never went in by myself. I always went in with the Spirit of the Lord. I prayed before I went in because every family dynamic is different. And so, you know, yes, for the first day, literally 24 hours, you know, of 2 days of shooting, it would be unveiling. You know, well, I don't do this. I just excuse after excuse after excuse. Or, you know, my parents raised me this way, so this is the way I do it. I mean, it was almost literally like a battle. But I understood that at the core of every parent, most parents really want the best for their children. And when they see you come in with the love, with the grace, with the understanding, you know, because nobody is perfect. I'm not perfect. And when I'm so transparent to you to say, listen, I didn't get this part right. That's why I'm trying to help you get it right.
Right.
When they understand that you're real and that you're there just to be a coach and to help them, they let down all those walls. And then once they let down the walls, we're able to do the real work.
I like you talk about the 4 Ps, and I want to try to break those down so that people can begin to understand, every parent that is listening and watching can sort of have a basis on where to start. Let's start with the first P.
Passion. You got to have passion. You got to be passionate about what you do. And I always like to start with passion, even though my book starts with persistence. I like to start with being passionate and patient, because passion really started me into my role of this parenting journey. If I didn't have the passion, and I didn't even know I had the passion. I mean, come on. My mother was a 25-year special education school teacher, and I watched her come home every day talking about, you know, oh, this child, I love them, but their parent won't come to the parent-teacher conference. And I was like, oh, I'll never do that. I mean, literally, I grew up saying I'll never do what my mother did. And needless to say, you know, we make plans, but God has a purpose.
Right.
And so because I got so passionate about my own child, and at first, really, I was selfish. It was about my child. But as I started doing this work, I saw that every experience in my life really was about helping other people. So I say first you have to start with passion and just understanding that you're not going to give up on your child, no matter if the child's 16 and they're slamming doors and sucking teeth and rolling eyes. You birthed this child, and you should refuse to accept that this child's going to be anything other than what you birthed. And so I come in with that kind of passion. And then I say patience, because I really believe that, you know, it's very difficult to have patience, and God had to work on me in the patience area in my life in general, because I see parents oftentimes that react instead of responding. You know, they're tired. They have a long day at work. They drive home, and the child's just like, me. Do this for me, do this for me. And then mom, you know, something goes wrong, or dad, and then they just blow up at the child. Well, that's not really fair to the child, right? So we have to learn some teaching tools, and I actually give the parents some tools on how to calm yourself. If you're not whole, if you don't feel good, if you're not in the moment and present, then that is not going to be good for your child. You're not going to be able to connect.
Right.
And then I go on to talk about being persistent, you know, and it doesn't happen overnight. None of these P's happen overnight. But we have to be persistent in what we do. My son used to have a really hard time following directions. I mean, literally, like I was like, ADHD, like what is going on here? Like I would say, go upstairs, get the bag, you know, put whatever in it, and then come downstairs. And at one point, it was like, okay, he'd go upstairs and he'd say, okay, go upstairs and do what, Mom? Like I understood that was a weakness for him when he was like 4. So what I said was, how am I going to help him? I'm just not going to give up on him. Let me give him some steps. So we actually sat down, did some visuals, and I started with that. I just like up the steps. So he had visuals. So that's where in the book I come up with that little chart that says steps to a tidy room, because he didn't know what a tidy room meant. He didn't know what it could. When I say clean up your room, parents often say clean up your room. But the kid doesn't know what clean means if it's never been cleaned. So I used to give him steps to clean his room. Put all the toys away. Make up your bed. Put this there. You know, just little steps to help your child. And that helps in terms of, you know, just them being able to understand it, and eventually we can get rid of the visuals. But I did what I needed to do, and I was persistent about it so that I could get the results. And then finally, positive. Oh, my gosh. If I can say, this is probably one of the most heartbreaking things as I went into the homes of American families. The negativity that they put on their children. You know, you'll never be like you'll never be anything. I mean, I heard all kinds of things. You'll never be anything. Put your hands up. This is how you're going to be in 20 years from now.
Wow.
You're just like your father if the father was in jail or something. I mean, literally just negativity after negativity. And I tell parents, listen, you have to catch the child being good. If you want, children just want attention. They don't care if it's negative or positive. And so when you put more emphasis on the negative, then that is what you're going to get, the self-fulfilling prophecy. I always tell parents, speak those things as though they were until they are.
I love it.
Speak those things that are not as though they were until they are. Just keep doing it. My son used to act up around 10, 11 years old. I don't know what was going on with him. And I just kept saying, you know, okay, I know you're acting like a knucklehead right now. I say that in my head. And then I would look at him and say, there is greatness in you.
That's right.
There is greatness in you. Do you understand? And I would almost will myself to say that, because I believe whatever you put in the atmosphere, whatever is coming back at you.
Absolutely. Stay on point. Hey, let's get a break right here. Parenting on Purpose. Dr. Deborah Tillman is our guest. We're back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Dr. Deborah Tillman is our guest. She's America's Supernanny, and we're talking about her newest book, Parenting on Purpose. It's a little short book, 100 pages. You could sit and read it almost in one setting. But it's filled, Dr. Tillman, with power-packed information and tips that every parent really needs to get hold of. And this is one that I thought was really, really critically important, and that is discipline. A lot of people have, so many ends of the spectrum on discipline. Let's talk about, first of all, what discipline is.
Yeah. Well, the definition of discipline, the root word comes from disciple, and it means to teach. And that's what I go in with, saying that it means to teach. And so everything we do, this book has a title for a reason, Parenting on Purpose, parenting intentionally to get a certain result. So if I have to discipline my child, which means to teach, then I want the outcome to be where they learn something. And so for me, I say, listen, that does not mean be the, permissive parent. That means be the parent that is very present in the moment, that when you have clear and concise rules for your household, because I do believe in standards and setting a high standard and expectation for our children. And if they made the choice not to follow the rule or to do something outside of the rule, then there is always a consequence to that. You don't just sort of allow children to get away with what they want to get away with and then expect them to just behave. You have to teach them how to behave. You have to teach them what the boundaries are and the guidelines are. That's our job as parents. We can't outsource that to anybody. We can't give that to the teachers, as lovely as they are. We can't give that to the church as lovely as they do their job. We are the first responders. We have to know who we are. And once we put the discipline in place, the teaching tools in place, then children are able to thrive.
But the
problem I have,
one of the P's, though, Dr. Tillman, is persistence. And for me, and for probably every parent, being able to persist in making sure that you are consistent. And that's probably where most of us miss it.
That is where I say consistency is the key to success. And so that is one of the problems I have, is that even if you have the rules, I come in there, we put up all the beautiful rules, the children made up the rules so they know what they are. Then they, somehow the mom or dad gives them a warning, and then they break the rule, then mom's giving them 2 warnings, and they break. And I'm like, okay, that was not part of the game. Like, that's not part of the system. The system has to remain consistent. And why does it need to remain consistent? I mean, just common sense. Why does it need to remain consistent? Because children need to understand how things flow. It's just like if I were to come to work every day and they say, this is your job, but then I come to work the next day and they say, this is something else, and they throw something else at me. They're doing all these different things. I'm confused. And then I start taking you almost for a joke because I'm like, okay, you're not real. Like, what is it? Is it this or that? So I try to tell parents, be very consistent. Whatever you did before, if they broke that same rule, do the same consequence. Don't go switching up. Or then sometimes parents get so, tired and overwhelmed, and I get it. But then they just say, oh, I just can't even deal with it. Just let them go today. Well, you can't let them go. You know what I mean? Correction is for a reason. Consistency is for a reason. And it's to help the child. It's to teach the child. So we gotta step up to the plate and do that.
So when you watch America's Supernanny, it's obvious that you are very organized and that, you can come in, and I think this is what's hard for any family, that somebody could come in that didn't know us, that could observe us and make some, not judgments, but make some decisions about who we are and what we're doing. And so you come in and you make that assessment. I'll call it an assessment of the family and what's happening. And then you set up structure for this family, which is probably what most people have issues with because everybody is busy, whether you've got both parents working or stay-at-home mom, everybody's busy. So how have people been able to keep those structures? Because it's almost like a hoarder. Like you take everything out and you clean it up, but are you able to stay on path or on task with the rules?
I think obviously America only sees 47 minutes of the show.
Right.
But they don't realize, and I really wish a lot of the show, you were able to say the things that I'm saying today, that I literally was in the house we were with families for 2 weeks. Okay, you saw 47 minutes.
Okay.
And so I'm in the house. In second season, I actually lived I stayed with them. I slept there. That was not fake. They blew up a little bit for me, and I slept in the house with the parents so that if there were any issues in the middle of the night, we can handle it. But think of it as an intensive. I come in, I build your trust first with the Lord. We build trust.
Right.
So now you trust me. So now, okay, you know that I want the best for you. So then I'm going to put some things in place. You're going to watch it work because obviously they're going to, the kids always listen to Miss Deborah. But that's fine. Then Miss Deborah leaves. I used to leave. Then we used to have cameras around their whole house and watch them put all of the tools that I gave them through the entire week in place without me being there.
Right.
They would have to do that. And then I'd come back, and that's a little clip it that you would see where I look at the tape, and then we kind of go through that. But this was a very intensive 2-week process with these parents. So I knew them very well, and they knew. It's almost like you test them, and then you see how good they are. Do you see whether or not this stuck or whether this didn't? So it wasn't just we go in, fix it like Mary Poppins, and then I'm popping out.
Right.
No, it was an intensive course where they actually had to do the work. Then I, assessed them, and believe it or not, I still contact. My parents have full range to me. I still deal with it. I don't know if you saw first season with the mom with 10 kids, and she had 10 kids. She was from North Carolina, the Carzels, and she was pregnant with with twins. Okay. I still we still talk. I still talk to the children. So they really, I love that family. They still don't beat the children. They came in, they had a horrible, they beat and they spanked and they knocked the kids upside the head. A horrible problem with bullying with the children. And those children have turned around. They have done a complete 180.
Wow. One of the one of the shows that struck me the most, and it just really broke my heart, where the family was the family was bullying this child and telling the child how dark her skin was. Talk about how important it is and how powerful words are, especially for children. And you say to her at one point, your child doesn't know anything about black being beautiful.
Exactly. That's the family I'm talking about. Those are the Carzels, and they were the most challenging in terms of just going in there and having to deal with so many dynamics, so many children. The children had no clue, and you're right, it was a color thing. It was like, you're light-skinned, and I was like, I'm the same color as you. And then that's why I did that little leaf experiment listen, all these beautiful colors we have together, we are beautiful. Don't you see beauty in your sister? But what you see took 15, 20, 24 hours of the same thing I had to say over and over and over again. And really, it came from where? The parents. When we pulled back the cover in the onion, that came from Mom. She was the first one who said that to the child. So it was a whole thing with generational curses and how she didn't feel good about herself and self-esteem. So we had to build her up first before we could even work on the children.
How are they doing? Yeah. How are they doing now? Because that was.
Oh my goodness, you would not believe. Desmond, all of them. I mean, just they get on the phone, they're like, they are so good. But that was the Lord, because they are very rooted and grounded in their faith. That's number one. Mm-hmm. And they took what we put in place, and they were consistent, and they kept doing it because they saw when I was there that it worked. So there's no reason why when I leave it should not work. They kept doing the same thing, and they are doing fantastic. They have 2 children graduating, one this year and another one next year. So I plan on going to one of those graduations.
Wow. So how did the Supernanny, America's Supernanny, how did that manifest for you?
Oh, my goodness. The same way my whole life has been. I mean, I have to be so honest with you, Carlette. I was just doing the work of working at my school, and I got an email. We had come back from vacation one day, and my son was on my email. I said, check the emails, and he said, oh, my, this is from Lifetime. And I'm like, oh, they probably send it to everybody. Just delete it. I literally said that. And he's like, I don't think so, Ma, because they say, Dear Deborah. And I'm like, okay, read it. So they said that Joe Frost had retired. They were looking for an America's Supernanny to film, and if I was interested, give him a call. So I prayed about it, gave him a call maybe 4 days later, and had an interview over the phone. And the lady said, literally, this happened maybe on a Monday. She said, okay, I want to do a Skype with you on Wednesday. I did a Skype. I did not even know how to do Skype, Carlette. My son had to set me up. I was like, what is Skype? What is this? So they asked me a lot of questions over Skype. And then they said, okay, they called me back on Thursday and said, oh, we're flying you out to California on Friday. They flew me out to California on Friday. I met with the Lifetime executives. They interviewed me. And the interview process was this. They threw me in a house with a woman that had a plethora of issues with a cameraman and said, fix her problem, and you only have an hour and a half to do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it. Dr. Tillman, you are absolutely amazing. We can't wait to see how high your star is going to rise. The book is called Parenting on Purpose. Tell people what your website is and how they can get the book.
Sure. The book is on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Nobles, but you can go to www.deborah.tillman.com.
I love it. Dr. Tillman, thank you for taking the time. We appreciate you greatly.
Thank you so much, Carlette.
All right. Stay on point, everybody. We're going to take a break, but we're back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. I'm Carlette Christmas.
And I'm Glenda Stock, and this is the last point today on Point.
Well, Glenda, our guest this morning, Dr. Deborah Tillman, America's Supernanny, has written yet another blockbuster book, Parenting on Purpose. And I think what parents will love the most that read it is it's a short read. It gets to the point, and it gives us all great ideas, not just parents, but grandparents and mentors and aunts and uncles who are all sort of co-parenting and helping to raise children.
I think that, as I listened to our guest talk about some of her experiences and the things that she has tried, who among us, especially I think in my age, realized in the day, and our parents realized in the day that we would need such assistance and guidance in today's world, but it is so real. It's so different. Parenting is very different. I mean, yes, there are principles that will always be steadfast and will always hold true, but I think as she points out, there are influencers in our kids' worlds today
Absolutely.
that are very, very different, very different, and they're very powerful differences that our grandparents and our parents may not have had to tread with.
Right.
And so being able to cope and knowing how to cope with those requires a whole different level, I think, of experience and know-how. As I have often listened to parents attempt to make sense of their children's behaviors and some of the challenges that they have had, it occurs to me that sometimes we put parenting into a different box that, if you have a child, then you must know how to parent.
Right.
You're big enough to have them, you must know how to raise them.
Exactly.
And guess what?
That's not always true, is it?
Not the case at all. And to me, it's very smart as parents to realize that, to accept where you need that help. We wouldn't think of not going to the doctor with a serious medical issue.
Right.
It would never occur to us to not get help for that, professional help for that. Yet we place that pressure, I think, sometimes, or parents do, upon themselves to say, I can't acknowledge that I might need guidance with this. And she's clear in her direction in her book that there are amazing resources and amazing things there to help parents with some of these more challenging and different kinds of issues.
Absolutely. I think that you just summarized that perfectly. And I think for parents who are watching, you're absolutely on point when you say, if we had something wrong, if we were sick, we would not think of going.
Wouldn't give it a second thought.
Yeah. But with parenting, and what I like about the book so much is that we're all trying to get it right.
Sure.
And many of us are using those old paradigms. I did what my mother did or what my parents did, but we have a new breed of children.
Yes.
Who we use what worked and what we know, but we have to come up another level, and she brings us up, but still very much with biblical principles.
Right.
And I think that we have to remain biblically on course. Otherwise, our kids are going to stray. They're going to stray anyway, but when we teach them and raise them in the way that they should go, the Bible says that that they will come back. And so it's really encouragement. And Dr. Tillman talked about writing a short book that was to the point that you can just read through easily and really locate where you are. I can remember when our son was born, they had a book, what to expect when you're expecting. It gives you everything that you can expect while you're carrying the baby. And then the pediatrician gives us a book. It's a thick book. And it takes you through from 0 to 5. And I guarantee you, we could go to that book from 0 to 5, and we could pinpoint everything that the child was doing.
Amazing.
But after 5,
they don't have a book for that.
You're on your own.
That book is yet to be written.
It's yet to be written, and great doctors.
Well, we've heard it said so many times. There's not a roadmap. They don't come with instructions, so to speak.
And they're all different.
Absolutely, and that is why exactly. While some of those exposures in their early days can certainly mold, their adulthood or their pre-adult years, there's not a magic formula. There's not, which is again why it's great to pay attention to the things around us. I recently had the very, very sad occasion to meet the mother of a young man that took his life recently. And to look into this mother's eyes and face and see the blank, hopeless, no answer, totally clueless what could have brought her son, who was doing well in school, was very involved in military boot camp, was looking forward to a very vibrant military career. And for her and the only thing that she could say is that he had been recently given a physical, and they had discovered that there was some issue with his heart that may potentially cause him to not qualify for this military career that he looked forward to. But, you know, did she think that he viewed it as a life and death situation?
Wow.
You know, of course not.
Right.
And I think that's what makes parenting nowadays such a frightening issue in some ways, and yet it can be one of the most bliss too.
Right.
But it's a frightening thought to think that you could have a child that you love unconditionally in your household struggling with those kinds of thought patterns, and you not know it, and you not be able to detect something. And that was borne out by his friends, you know, teenage friends, as well as by adult friends.
Wow.
That this totally came out of the blue. So it again just behooves, I think, all of us. You know, I am not a parent per se, but I take the responsibility to provide example to the youth in my life, be it nieces, nephews, friends, children, otherwise, to try to be that extra ear, that extra set of eyes, that extra perception that sometimes is often the big miss, miss. And you know, let's face it, as parents, we do our best, and you certainly provide the best that you can, and you give the best resources. And it's hard when you see them rebel, and it's tough to accept their rebellion. And you almost want to turn a deaf ear and think, you know, that's going to go away.
Right.
You know, that's a phase, and it's going to go away. When in reality, those are sometimes the red flags that you have to pay attention to, because they are tied sometimes to bigger challenges, as our guest today was so eloquent in pointing out to us.
Absolutely. Great stuff. Hey, everybody, we're out of time for now. I'm Carlette Christmas.
And I'm Glenda Stock, and this has been The Last Point, today on Point.
Stay with us, everybody. We're back after this.